ILTV's Israel Weekly, a show in which we debate the major issues happening in Israel. Our topics today are the American BDS student who lost the appeal and will be deported, and Avigdor Lieberman's orders to halt fuel shipments into Gaza until the violence stops. Joining me in the studio are editor-in-chief of Midad.org, Ziv Maor.
Hi.
Attorney and expert in public diplomacy, Ran Bar Yoshafat, retired Brigadier General Israela Oron, and Ambassador Yosef Livnei. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
An Israeli law that was put into motion last year by the Strategic Affairs Ministry called for the banning of anti-Israel boycotters who are connected to pro-BDS organizations. Several weeks ago, U.S. student Lara Al-Qassem was on her way to study at Hebrew University, but was detained at Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion Airport. Al-Qassem was the former president of her campus chapter of the group National Students for Justice in Palestine, which has been known to promote the boycott against the State of Israel. Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan said that to gain entry into Israel, Al-Qassem would need to repudiate the BDS movement. He rejected a letter sent by Al-Qassem's lawyers, which promised that she wouldn't participate in boycott activities during her stay in Israel. On Friday, the courts rejected Al-Qassem's appeal and ordered her deportation back to the States. Erdan issued a statement blaming the left wing in Israel for the negative fallout and said they initiated the international campaign to bring someone into the country who headed one of the most anti-Semitic organizations in the U.S. He also criticized the university for using taxpayer dollars to subsidize her studies. Asher Friedman, the spokesman for the Israeli Public Security Ministry, had this to say about the deportation.
Not a question of opinions. We're not looking to decide on prevention of entry based on opinions, based on somebody who supports, somebody who called one, somebody who signed a petition. We're looking at actions. We have clear criteria, and we believe that Ms. Al-Qassem meets those criteria based on her actions and on the actions of the organization of which she was a senior leader over several years.
So the first question is, do you think the law that bans BDS activity has gone too far? Yosef, I'll start with you.
Look, I think that each country has the absolute right to determine who can come in and who should stay away. I think that whatever law exists, it needs to be applied wisely. And especially when you're talking about controversial issues, the one thing that needs to be done is to be smart and to do it in such a way that doesn't arouse unnecessary criticism and negative propaganda overseas. This is in general terms. Now, I know that, and I remember personally when I was a student in America in 1972, one of my classmates was a Chilean fellow who was an ardent supporter of President Allende. And he went around every day for weeks on against the U.S., how they support the reactionary forces in Chile. And nobody paid much attention to him. We would never know now what would happen if she were allowed in. Hopefully, it will, the whole storm will somehow die away. I'm not so sure. I think that people may use her case to ventilate anti-Israeli feelings, but it's done. I mean, I don't know that I would have taken the same attitude.
Ziv, how do you respond?
Well, this whole affair seems to me like a PR trap, and Israel went right into it knowingly, and in my eyes it should have done so, because sending a person like Lara Al-Qassem, who is a young female student who is quite photogenic, and to have it depicted as the target of the act against the BDS is indeed a PR trap. The damage that she could have caused while being here is very mild, if any, but letting her in, and by that turning the act itself into a dismiss, into something that will not be applied eventually, is basically an order or an invitation for people who can actually cause damage and cause some incitement against people who are active in Israel in next stage. If she would have been let in, other people way more dangerous than her would have had to be let in.
Ran, how do you feel about it setting a precedent?
I agree completely, I have to say. First of all, I resent the BDS abbreviation. I call them the Movement to Destroy Israel. And SJP, the Anti-Defamation League, has called them an anti-Semitic organization. So when someone is coming here, I will be very cautious. Now, I've heard the argument that well, if she's coming to Israel, she's not boycotting Israel. But that's not really the truth of the matter. I've met several people who came to Israel because they said it is easier for us to harm Israel when we're here. So if someone was an active member of SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine, I think Israel did the right thing by saying, we're sorry, you don't have interest here into Israel.
Yisrael, how do you feel about Ziv saying that it was a PR stunt?
I'm not very good in PR, so I will say this. I think this was a stupid decision on behalf of the Israeli government and the Israeli authorities, because if we are going into details, I don't think she would jeopardize the security of the state of Israel in any way. And I think that the support that she gets from the Hebrew University is a sign that she is no danger for the state of Israel. And on the other hand, on the same side, I mean, this is a damage that was caused to the state of Israel internationally, in the international community, that it will be very, very hard to fix. Next time that somebody that is endangering Israel will come into Israel, we'll know how to deal with them. I'm against BDS. I think it's a movement that we should try and to limit its effect on the international community. However, I think it should not exist at all. However, I think the way that Israel is presented now in the eyes of the international community is a very, I think, problematic way.
So do you think the university acted in the best interest by going against the processes of the state in order to defend her? Ron, how do you feel?
So I just want to say no one is claiming that she's a threat to Israel. She's a student, a weak student. But the thing is that Israel has the ability to say you're not welcome here. Whenever I fly to the States, they ask me, at customs, what is my purpose? What is the purpose of my visit? And the purpose of her visit was to vilify Israel. I'm very happy I live in a democracy.
Sure?
I am sure. Okay. I'm very happy that I live in a democracy, that people can have different opinions, including the Hebrew University, which is currently about to have a conference about the occupation. So it's fine, the more criticism you receive from the academia, the more liberal democracy you are. So they are entitled of their opinion, but I'm very happy that still in this democracy you have to follow according to the law that the government has decided to pass.
I think that one has to put it in a little bit of a wider perspective. Over the last few months, we've had cases where people were stopped at the border, and so she's in the latest case. I think that if she were to have been let in, knowing that she has this problematic history, you can always, say, look, you violated the terms of your visa, therefore we will have to ask you to leave. I think that you're never sorry for something that you didn't do. In this case, especially when it comes to PR.
So
now,
what would have been the thing that you would have done that would have justify deporting it after coming in?
No, if somebody comes in and supposedly she comes in order to get a master's degree or whatever.
No, she came to speak and to promote her BDS agenda.
She came to study, and that was the purpose of the visa. People don't get visas to come and do PR for...
I'm sorry, that's false. I know,
yes,
I know
but demonstration,
several.
if she would have come and demonstrate against housing issues...
In my experience, I've had to deal with BDS.
I believe that you should let him finish.
I dealt with BDS in several places, lately in New Zealand. I know what BDS, I know what happens. You have to make sure that when you pick your target, you pick those that have the most, they have the capability to hurt you the most. I don't think that someone like her could hurt you to such a degree. And if you know that she used to participate in BDS movement, you take a look, and if she's involved in political activities, first of all, as a foreign citizen, you could say foreign citizens cannot participate in internal Israeli political debates.
There is no such law.
If she was
No,
in
but
no
you
such
can.
law.
Sorry.
We are a free state. Everybody who's here has the right to speak and to say whatever he wants. That's,
No, but
that's the
not
exact
to
point.
participate.
What I'm saying, Yosef, is that the damage that would have been caused by deporting her after she was in would have been the same, maybe even worse, if the pictures of her being arrested in a protest would have come out eventually.
And
this
what
is the
if
same.
she were to really dedicate herself to study and not participate?
This is a PR stunt, so this wouldn't have been the case. In any way, we are a democratic government subject to the rule of law. The Israeli government has not the liberty to say we are allowing her in because the damage that she might cause is not that harm, but someone else who following the same criteria that have decided by the Israeli parliament is more dangerous, and then we have
No, you can apply
we have
the law.
arbitrarily decided that we ban him from coming in and not her.
We do
can
have to move
apply
on to
the
the next
law.
topic. If you want to just say one sentence about it, and then we'll move on. Rohan?
Half a sentence. Just to say, if she was a former neo-Nazi, I don't think that we would have this debate. We'd say, no, it's not going to cause the damage, but still we're not going to let that
But there's
person
a
in.
difference.
Yosef?
Well, that's where we differ.
A former
I beg to
neo-Nazi
differ.
that wants to study in the Hebrew University.
In
very
order to
interesting.
promote neo-Nazi activity in Israel, we would say no.
I beg to differ. I don't think.
Let's
that-
just point out that SJP is not only an anti-Semitic organization by the ADL, it is also defined as an affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas by the American Congress. It is a dangerous organization, and in my eyes, she is in somewhat affiliated with terrorism against Jews.
If we are talking about PR, this is the worst PR for the state of Israel. Thank you.
All right, we do have to move on. Thanks for your input. So Israel's been aiding in the delivery of thousands of liters of fuel to Gaza, hoping this would stop the weekly border clashes. The violence has continued to escalate, and on Thursday, the IDF released a video showing the destruction of a Hamas tunnel from Gaza into Israel. On Saturday, a large blimp balloon filled with explosives was sent into Israel from Gaza, while flammable balloons keep coming into the Israel Region Ashkelon Regional Council and Jerusalem's Ein Kerem neighborhood just a couple days ago. So Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman has decided to halt the flow of fuel into Gaza until Hamas stops the violence against Israel. Meanwhile, Israeli security officials have opposed his decision, saying it's impossible to pressure Hamas and stop all shipments as the humanitarian situation in the Strip will continue to decline. So the first question is, do you agree with Lieberman that stopping the fuel into Gaza will be effective in reducing the violence? Ziv, we'll start with you.
Well, let's start once again with the fact that the issue or the situation that we're facing in Gaza, just like the previous issue that we discussed, is at its core a PR stunt against Israel, because those balloons and those kites are dangerous, but the pictures of targeting people who all they do are using innocent-looking objects like balloons and kites puts us in a very peculiar situation PR-wise. Regardless of that, we are once again a sovereign country that has to take care of itself regardless of what it looks like. Those people are a threat to our sovereignty. Now, what happened yesterday? What happened this Saturday where 20 people basically broke Israeli sovereignty and stole the border and came to a situation very close to kidnapping a soldier, once again putting us in a similar situation to the one we were in 10 years ago with Gilad Shalit. This is a very dangerous situation, and whoever looks at kites and balloons and said this is what we're facing, basically either colluding with this PR stunt or looking the other way and ignoring the threat. As for Lieberman's move to banning the fuel, this would be a start for dealing with the issue. Whether or not this kind of pressure is the effective one is something that I have the trust in him, by the way, way more in him than in the high officer of the military right now, who are basically putting themselves in a situation of defending not the Israeli security interest, but the humanitarian interest of the Palestinians, which is not the job of the Israeli Defense Forces. Okay, and once the officers say this is the interest that you want to protect, then I have quite unusually the trust in this defense minister that says that this would be the effective way. I trust that he got the smart advice from his surroundings.
Yisraela, do you agree with Lieberman's actions?
This is the question you have to see is not this question. The question is much wider question, because first of all, we are dealing here with a very complicated situation with many players: Israel, Egypt, the Palestinian Authority, the Hamas in Gaza, Qatar, and everybody is a very important player in this. What we were very optimistic last week when I personally, and some of us, when we read the interview of Sinwar, the leader of Hamas in Gaza, in one of the Israeli papers, and he was willing, and he looked as if he's very moderate all of a sudden. And then a few days later, he started again all the attacks on the fence and everything. And his demand basically is that he will give quiet for quiet. However, and then he wanted us to stop the siege in Gaza. But we know that while doing it, he will continue to dig tunnels, and we know that he will do other things that will endanger Israel. So I really wonder what are his real intentions. However, and I beg to differ, I think that there is a connection between the events in Gaza on the fence and the situation of the citizens in Gaza. I think that people that don't have electricity, almost at all, electricity, they don't have water, they are in a terrible situation, they are highly motivated to do exactly what we are seeing now on the screen. So the Israeli military and the head of the chief of staff and other generals in the Israeli military, I think they know the connection, and they believe that if you will ease the situation in Gaza for the civilian, the military and the security situation will improve.
Ron, do you agree with Israela?
No. It's very sad. We've left Gaza, but Gaza seems to not want to leave us. First of all, regarding the halt of fuel, even if we would have peace with the Arabs living in Gaza, which I don't believe we'll ever have, I don't understand why I'm supposed to supply them with gasoline. They're using this gasoline to attack Israeli soldiers, and even if they would have used it to actually develop a country, it's not my responsibility. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to the quote-unquote protesters who are coming to cross the fence and enter into a sovereign state, I think Israel needs to use a lot more power in order to stop them. I think every person who's trying to cross the fence needs to be shot in order to kill that person.
What will happen to Israeli PR?
I don't care about Israel's PR. I care about the life of the soldiers before I care about the PR. Plus, as we've seen before, the movement to destroy Israel, the BDS movement, are basically saying that we're doing all these horrible stuff anyways. Right now, I just want to make sure that my soldiers are being protected. And if this would have happened in America, if someone would cross the border into a private land in America, that person would be shot. So when someone...
You think the chief of staff is cares about the soldiers?
You asked Ziv for a second to let the ambassador finish. Please let me finish. So when we're talking about people who are shouting that they want to slaughter Jews and they're trying to cross the fence and kidnap soldiers, yes, I know it sounds very radical. I think they should be shot. Regarding the equation that because they're suffering in Gaza, that's where they're aiming into terror, that's just false. Actually, Hamas is the second wealthiest terrorist organization in the world, and there is no connection between the poverty and the reasons to create terror. What is inciting terror is the fact that when they go and they protest near the fence, Hamas is paying them, and that's the real cause for all of these protests. So what I would do, I would use a much harsh hand. I would actually try to take down the Hamas terrorists, and I will definitely not allow anyone crossing the fence into Israel or supplying them with fuel that they will be using against us to hurt innocent Israeli civilians.
Yosef?
Well, I take a different view. I think that, first of all, we're talking about a situation where damn if I do and damn if I don't. Whatever decision we take, it has its pros and its cons. I think that, first of all, I beg to differ with the assumption that the Israeli military doesn't know what it's doing, or that it's taking into consideration just the interests of the Palestinians residing in Gaza. I think this is baseless. But I think that any policy choice that you make has its ups and its downs. I think by stopping the fuel, the diesel, into Gaza, sends a message that we have the means to apply pressure, and it will be painful. Will it help? I don't know. We're talking about a situation where in a normal, when you have two nations that share more or less values and opinions, maybe when you apply pressure on one side, people will give in on other issues. Here, I don't know. I don't know that we have a clear-cut option and choice. I don't think we can go into Gaza and annihilate Hamas. It won't work. I am certainly opposed to shooting at people on the fence. I think there's got to be a way where you stop them, and there have to be other options besides shooting people. And I think that stopping the diesel sends a message. Now, as Israel said, since there are so many players, some of the players are probably taking into consideration the decision of Minister Lieberman, will factor it into their positions, and when they deal with other players, it'll come into play. What will happen, I don't know. I think again, this is a highly complicated and highly explosive situation, and we'll have to see how we come out of it.
We have to wrap up, but if you just want to...
One very important sentence.
Yes.
Let's discuss where this fuel comes from. This is fuel that comes from Qatar as a gift to the Palestinians of Gaza, and they deport...
From Israel.
No, it comes from Qatar through Israel.
The money comes from Qatar, the money for it, and it comes from Israel. This is very important.
In any way, this comes through Israeli soil and Israeli sovereignty. The same way this policy of Qatar could have been done through Egyptian soil. And the reason that this is not being done so because Egypt is not willing, maybe it is not even capable of maintaining the security of this oil coming into Gaza through the Sinai Peninsula. So basically what we are having, the people who do not share our own interest who are against us. Qatar was still banning in Israel, using Israeli soil and Israeli sovereignty, promote its policy towards Gaza. Now, once this is the kind of behavior that we see from Gaza, we have every right not to cooperate with these actions of Qatar's government, regardless of its own sovereignty and its own right to do whatever it wants with its oil and with its money. But us being a mean of delivering this gift from the Qatars to the Gazans, something that we don't have to do and does not represent any sort of a thing like a siege or whatever. The Qatars could find other ways to give their gifts to the Gazans.
All right, well, that's all the time we have today for ILTV's Israel Weekly. I'd like to thank our guests, Ziv Maor, Ran Bar Yoshafat, Israela Oron, and Yosef Livnei. And thanks to all of you for tuning in today. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and visit our website at iltv.tv. I'm Yael Shir, and thanks for watching.